Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Prep Life Podcast. This is your founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini, Amy Anger. And today I am joined by my fabulous co host, Leemarie Hossetter. Hi,
Hey
welcome to the show.
everyone. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah. So we interviewed Charla from the Arnold Amateur, but I also wanted to kind of recap the Arnold. I felt like obviously her story needed its own episode that was incredible. So if you haven't had the chance to listen to that, go back and check it out. But yes, I wanted to recap all of the events of the Arnold because there was so much that happened that weekend. So let's just start with kind of like that chronological order. So we of course had the amateur on Thursday with Charla and all of those festivities. And then at night was the Meet the Athletes. So wheelchair bodybuilding actually had its own room, which was pretty cool. And she was kind of in there with her medal and the other two champions and all of the pros. And we went around and, of course, saw all of our, heroes in the bikini division, and some of the wellness competitors. So we got a chance to talk to Angelica Teixeira, Phoebe Hagan, Isabella Nunez from wellness, and we saw like Ellie Fernandez and talked to her for a while. Laura Lee Chapados had a huge line.
Mhm.
I think Charlotte ended up being able to talk with her, but I did not get the opportunity at that particular event. However, it was so cool just to like chat with these athletes one on one and just kind of people coming up to her randomly, like wanting to take pictures with her, with Charla, and just like sharing their story about, maybe a loved one that had lost like use of their legs and how much she's inspiring them. And um, just kind of cool to see all of that come about. So that was Thursday night. And then Friday was the expo. And my client Kim actually came to down to be at the expo, but also to we went to the pros gym. Have you ever heard of that? Like the
Mhm.
pros gym that's down
Yeah,
there?
yeah, I've heard of that for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like the iconic gym that all the pros work out at, and
Yep.
Arnold makes his appearances, and they have like all these like guests that come
Mhm.
and do talks and things during the week of the Arnold. So I got a weekend pass, and um, I had done some EMG testing with her since she's from Michigan. So we don't get together very often. So we were able to do like a glute specific like EMG test, and we learned some really unique things about her body. As you've tried that with me.
Yeah.
So like with you, I discovered different things. With her, I discovered crazy engagement off of frog pumps.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, like hitting 500, which on an EMG is really hard to get to
Yeah.
that number.
Yep.
Usually the highest I see is like 300.
Mhm.
So that was a really cool discovery for her body. Like that's just a really good way for her to start activating her glutes. So we're gonna start incorporating that as a warm up. We got to do some posing. They had a posing room there. And then we met Karina, the fitness pro, and we kind of like saw her at the expo, and then we walked around. And have you ever heard about the expo or like experienced anything like that where it's like a million booths? Have you?
So, yes, but not for fitness. So, I used to do like
Okay.
music expos at festivals, and it's
Uh-huh.
just, like overwhelming. It's so incredible. And then there is a Kansas City Fitness Expo, but it's not just bodybuilding. It's like everything, so like biking and running and all sorts of things, Orange Theory and stuff.
Mhm.
But I can imagine just the overwhelm of so much bodybuilding and supplements and everything.
Yeah, and the Arnold so I think a lot of people, they think of Arnold Schwarzenegger and they think of like bodybuilding and that's like what it's all about, but it's actually the biggest fitness and sports. It's the most unique sports in the world.
That's
So it's
good.
the largest world sports expo. So you'll see everything from fencing. I don't even know what these one people were doing. They were, like, in armor and, like, had axes. They were, like, fighting each other through these gates of wood. It was
Gosh.
but you'll see all these strange things. So, like, they have the pump and run where you bench press and then you run a 5K.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, they have every single random thing,
Isn't there
but yeah, they'll
strongman
have
too? Like strongman
mhm.
and stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's strongman. There was the firefighter strongman as well.
Oh, okay.
That was right before the fashion show, actually. Arnold had given the awards to that, but yeah, they just have, like, every unique sport that you could possibly think of, and there's vendors of every single fitness
Mm,
thing that you could possibly think of as well,
mhm.
and so it to me, it was like bodybuilder trick or treating because
Yeah.
you get, like, bars and protein and, like, aminos and just, like, different samples of different, um so, yeah, and you get to see, like, what are the new trends in
Mhm,
fitness and, like, what the new equipment is, and,
mhm.
I mean, you name it, like, they have a booth for it if it has to
Wow.
do with fitness, so,
Mhm.
it's pretty cool, like, if you haven't gone, it's definitely something to do. There's at least at the very least, people watching is very much a thing at
Yeah,
that.
I love that. That's so cool.
So, yeah, a lot of famous people, and then, so, yeah, Friday night, we had our, after we kind of went around the expo, like, Kim and Charlotte had a couple, like, interviews with the press, and with King Kong Kelly, and then we had, like, our opening ceremony for Angel Competition Bikinis, fashion show and, like, our rehearsal and things, which was really cool. Um, and then Saturday was the fashion show, but I wanted to share kind of the behind the scenes that I got to experience with Angelica and Phoebe. It was so
Mhm.
cool. I was total fangirling, like, low key, just trying to, like, be cool, but I got to, like, hang out in the makeup and hair at, Elaine Goodlad's,
Mhm.
and Nancy. They had so it was right before the pros were going on. So the cool thing about the Arnold is you get free access as long as you pay for your expo pass, you get access to all the prejudging of the pros. I mean, that's free. So you just can watch it from the stage that's on the
Yeah.
expo constantly running. So Bikini was going on, I think at like 11. Um, so from, like, 9 to whatever I don't even remember. I got there at, like, 8:30, but I was just hanging out, like, recording content for, like, Phoebe and, like, Angelica, and I was kind of interviewing her, so I'm hoping she agrees. She said that after the Arnold UK that she was like, "Don't reach out to me right away," but she's like, "After Arnold UK, when things kinda calm down," she's like, "Reach out." She's like, "I'd love to come on your podcast." She's like, I could say a few things about prep life."
Wow.
Um,
No kidding.
but yeah, do you want me to just kind of go over, like, some of the stuff that she talked about?
Yeah, that would
Because
be
I
amazing.
just felt like it was so interesting. So, as probably a lot of you know, that this is her first year, self-coaching, and,
Mhm.
Kim Odo was her coach for years when she was Miss Bikini Olympia, Miss Bikini International, and, then she had her 2 babies, and the Arnold was her comeback show. So, I felt bad, like, asking her questions, but she's just such a real person, such a genuine person, her and Phoebe both, and Elaine was saying the same thing. She's like, literally, like, they are exactly who they are. And a lot of times on social media, like, you'll see somebody acting a certain way, and you're, like, super inspired by them, they're super positive, and then when you meet them in real life, it's kind of like a little bit of a letdown, but I
Mhm.
would say it's the complete opposite with both of them, like, they are exactly who they are, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And Angelica was talking with us about how she got herself ready 6 weeks early, and she was, like, rivers on her arms, like, veins like crazy the night before, and she had this Tupperware of peanut butter, and the whole Tupperware was, like, filled, and she's like, "I just gotta keep eating my peanut butter because"
Gosh.
she's like,
I
"I
do
have to
that,
soften
baby.
up." She's like, "My peanut butter." She's like, "I just keep eating a peanut butter so I can soften because 'cause I'm too hard, I'm too veiny,"
Gosh,
you know,
that is
and she just
goals. That is total goals. Let's
yeah,
do that. More peanut butter. That's
yeah, so
so
She was just
Oh.
pumping herself with peanut butter to soften those veins up, and she's like, "I finally didn't think I got it to a point where it's soft enough," you know? And she was eating this big container of rice um but yeah, she was FaceTiming with her family while she was getting hair and makeup done, and, like, her little babies are so cute, and she just she said that she was so glad that they were there, but she was like, I'm not gonna be able to make eye contact with them because she's like, "I think I might start crying on stage." Um, but yeah, we were just talking about how she feels like she's able to reach, like, a whole new audience, like, being a mom and kind of, like, inspiring in a different way, which she was excited about. And she was saying how she was excited because her kids are eating so healthy at a young age and they don't know any different. And how, like her oldest daughter will like come out and pose in her like little bikini poses and how they're just, how it's been such a positive thing. And I was kind of asking her, like, is this overwhelming to you, having the kids and like, coming making your comeback? And she said, the last week, she's like, I will admit, like, I felt bad a little bit because 'cause I've had to, like, kind of hand them off to the nanny and my mother-in-law, but she's like, "Other than that, like, I've really made it a point to make sure that I was really interacting and being intentional and not letting this kind of get in the way of, what I value most and everything." So, it was just really cool to talk with her about all of that. So, yeah,
So just
she's
like my just quick thought about her, like mentioning her comeback after having kids. I don't know if you watched Tyler Mannion's bikini review of the Arnold,
yeah,
but the one thing
yeah,
that stuck out that he complimented Angelica about was that previously her one of the things she'd gotten feedback with is core control and keeping her
yeah,
core tight and how that has improved so much. And I just thought
yeah,
like what a great feedback to get after at your first comeback show after having kids. And it just
right,
kind of was inspiring to be like, keep working on constantly improving. Even the pros, even Olympians are constantly working on improving. And just because you had kids doesn't mean you can't be at that competitive level and get fourth place at one of the biggest shows at like as your first comeback show, like or your comeback
yeah.
season or whatever. Like that was really cool, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, she got 4th and, we can probably talk about those placements if you want, to start, obviously Laura Lee, reigning champ, got her 3P, which was incredible. She looked phenomenal. So did Amy Delgado. I know you had Laura Lee in first. I had Amy in first, and I think
One
that it
point
was like
difference.
a 1 point difference.
Yes.
Yeah. And I
Yes.
mean, and I know this has been reviewed and kind of like a lot of people have talked about like how they are just both really fit the criteria with 2 completely different bodies.
Yeah.
Um, we've got Amy who's shorter, that's more athletic and poppy, and then you've got like Laura Lee where she's tall and streamlined, but that they both fit the bikini criteria.
Mhm.
Um, and I think Tyler said the only thing that really hurt Amy was that her shoulders might be a little too overpowering.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah,
what you
he did
saw in
mention that. Yeah, he mentioned
the video?
that, and then Laura Lee's were on point, but
Mhm,
then she could work on her arm definition or building up her arms a little bit.
mhm.
The feedback on those 2 was just insane to watch. I mean, those
Yeah.
judges' eyes are incredible. I watching them compare next to each other, my heart really did want Amy to win, even though I'm such a huge Lorelai fan. But I just thought she looked so full and so healthy and athletic, and I just thought she had an amazing look. But she does have
Absolutely.
pretty big shoulders. I mean,
Yeah,
she is
yeah.
jacked.
I felt like, so I was listening to the commentary because it was cool that Jana Leuk finally, they have a female, like, doing the a bikini athlete that actually doing the commentary for Bikini, which thank goodness on that. But as she was talking, she was saying too that I think just and I noticed this too, is just, like, a little bit more, like, a sharpness, in the glute ham tie-in area that Laura Lee had versus
Mhm.
Amy. It was just a little bit more, intensified, and I think, they maybe talked about that in the walk or something like that, but
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, and their back poses, I mean, you could see, rear delts, everything was, matching to
Mhm.
me there. So it's pretty impressive. And then we had Vanya in third. I don't think any of us had predicted that.
Oh,
I know I had her in my top five.
mhm.
I think I had her in fourth. So I had her and
Not one that I
Angelica
know
flip flop.
about.
Yeah,
That
she's kind of an up and coming pro, but she's a force to be reckoned with for sure.
she looked great.
Yeah, and then so Angelica got 4th and then Phoebe got 5th, and, yeah, I mean, kind of just watching the whole process of Phoebe getting her glam, it was really cool. I mean, she's got such gorgeous hair, and Elaine was, like,
No.
giving her a scalp massage and
Mhm.
trimming her
Mhm.
locks. I mean, she's just so pretty and such a unique beauty, but
Okay, I have
yeah,
a
she
question for you as a coach and a judge about this
yeah,
because Tyler in his recap only went to fourth place, so he didn't
yeah,
really touch on fifth and sixth.
right.
I thought Phoebe looked the best she's ever looked. Like she looked so good and well conditioned. Do you have any like perspective on why she got fifth versus a higher up placement?
I felt like and Janet alluded to this too in her commentary, is that her legs weren't quite in the condition that they needed to be. So
Okay.
they were just, like, right on the edge, which is what we kind of talked about, like, with her getting 5th, like, if she could bring that conditioning in at the buzzer, then she would come in perfectly. So who knows, Arnold UK, she could really just need that little bit more to get that conditioning in her lower half that she brings it for that. I know Angelica's going to that as well, so that'll
Well,
be
rematch.
interesting. Yeah, because I feel like both of them, it was like a little bit of a sharpness in their ham tie-in that they needed a little bit more crispness,
Mhm.
for both of them. Because I felt like Angelica and Phoebe, both their, like, core and upper body was, like, right on point. It was just that lower half sometimes with females, it's just that last part
Yep.
that comes in. Ellie Fernandez, who got 6th, she had the most insane waist in person I have ever seen in my life. Honestly, I've never seen a smaller waist in person. It looked a lot bigger, like, once she was on stage and, like, tanned up, but at Meet the Athletes I should show you this photo. It's just crazy how small her waist is. I mean, that's how she's pulling off that look,
Yeah.
to pull in 6th is just how small her waist
Mhm.
is. It makes her hourglass just, like, all that more,
Mhm.
um, proportionate. Makes her upper body look way bigger than what it actually is, and her glutes and everything, because her waist is so small. I'd really like to know what she's doing to get that tiny of a
Yeah.
waist.
Maybe
I've
it's
never seen it that small.
mhm.
Honestly, and I've met her in person quite a bit. I've never seen her that, like, shredded in the core.
Wow. Good for
It
her.
was like a CD.
That's crazy.
Seriously. It
That's
was
crazy.
mind-blowing. But yeah, so that's kind of it on the bikini, but yeah, let's see here. So, do we wanna go over some of the champions in the other divisions? Did you wanna talk about open men's bodybuilding?
Go for it. I'm all ears. I don't know that much. I do know the first 3 names. I know them.
Okay. Those are the only ones that I
Names.
really know. I
Yeah.
think the only 2 really worth talking about are Hadi Choopan and Samson, I mean, in my opinion, because those are
Mhm.
the only ones that I really know.
Mhm.
Um, and when I looked at both of them and when I watched Tyler's kind of breakdown too, um, it was clear that Hadi, this was the best shape he's ever been in,
Oh,
like, hands down, Tyler said, and the best muscle fullness and everything, separation that he's ever had. Um, and then Samson just needs to bring his conditioning,
mhm.
and he really, Hadi, there was just, like, no beating him that day.
Mhm.
Um, so we'll see what Samson does in the Arnold UK, but he is from the UK, I know that. He's just a bigger guy that, um, he has the right size, the right shape, he just needs to pull in the conditioning. Um, and then I was surprised to see, a new winner with classic physique, Wesley. He
Mhm.
kinda came out of nowhere. I've never heard of him before. Ramon and Urs are pretty and Breon are pretty, like, famous guys. Ramon got 2nd,
I
Urs
was
got
just gonna say, Ramon,
3rd.
didn't he get, isn't he the one that was kind of up against Chris Bumstead during
Yeah,
yeah, it was
yeah.
like this yeah, I
Mhm.
would
Like,
totally
real back and
expect him to
forth.
yep.
So, I was really grateful that Tyler broke down that pose down and kinda went through each mandatory pose and where Wesley beat Ramon over him. Really, it seemed to me like Ramon probably would have had it if he would've nailed his poses, but the way and you should watch the video on Instagram by Tyler. He does a really nice job of breaking down why Ramon kind of failed in each of the poses, like where he was holding his hands, like how much he was showing his lats, because he definitely has a much smaller waist than
Mhm.
Wesley. Wesley has good size, but when he was holding the poses, he was absolutely nailing them, and to me, like, he made it Tyler made it really seem like this was a posing game over anything, which
Wow.
I think is a big lesson because that's a really hard thing to lose, like, if you just didn't pose right.
Mhm.
Um, but I think he got him at, like, 5 out of I don't know, what are there, 7 mandatories? Um, there were only a couple. I think the front abdominal and thigh was about the only one that Ramon really, like, nailed because his core is just shredded and his waist is so small for how big his muscles are.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was interesting to listen to that, and, um, a lot of the men's physique guys that are listed in the top 6, they aren't even people that are known to me. I've never heard of them, and this used to be a category where I was very familiar with a lot of the winners, but, Diago, Montenegro was the winner there, and then with the wellness, of course, Franciella just continues to,
Anyone beat her? Like,
um so she didn't go to the Arnold last year, so I think Isabel
yeah,
or
she won.
Isa,
Yep.
Nunez was the champion because, Franciella didn't go.
Mhm.
But yeah, so far, like, at least at the Olympia,
And it's
Franciella
always those
or
2. It's been those 2, the whole
mhm.
since wellness is a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They're
So
incredible. They're absolutely gorgeous. I love the difference between those 2 though. Like I
yeah.
mean, to me, they do have very different physiques, just like in bikini.
Mhm.
But they both are so good.
I know. Isabella is so sweet. I was so glad to take a picture with her, and, she doesn't speak much English because she's Brazilian. She speaks, Portuguese, but she's just always been so friendly and so nice, and, she was so happy to take a picture with us, at the Meet the Athletes. She's just a really great ambassador of the sport. And then there was a new wheelchair champion, which he's from India, so I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Rashish John. He was brand new, and I was surprised that Harold Kelly, I got to talk to him quite a bit because he and Charlotte got interviewed. So they interviewed the papers wanted to interview the reigning champ of the men, and since she was the first ever woman champion, even though she's an amateur, like she had the interview with Harold. So I got to talk to him for quite a while, but he's he's won 8 different Arnold titles. A couple of them were like Africa and different places. So I think they only count that he has like 7 for the actual Arnold. But he has like 8 or maybe it's 5 Olympia titles. Um, so he was talking to me about how he was a bodybuilder before he got in a car accident, and then he actually fractured his thoracic getting thrown, and the seat belt actually did something where it, like, paralyzed him in 2000, and I don't wanna quote this incorrectly, but I think 2007 is when he had the injury, and then he competed in 2008, and since then, he's just been accumulating titles, like, he's a he's an incredible guy, but he got 4th, and then, if you listen to our last episode with Charlotte, you heard that Grigsby that He's a rookie. He got 5th in the wheelchair
Mhm.
this year, so that was pretty cool. He actually got shot by somebody in his bed, um, that's how he got paralyzed. He Somebody was breaking into his friend's house, he was there on vacation, and, he shot the intruder, and the intruder shot him. I don't know how he survived that, um, but yeah, he's, like, incredible. He's such a nice guy. Um, he was eating cucumbers and somebody was asking him, they're like, "How do you get such great arms?" And he's like he held up the cucumber and he's like,
That's my
"Cucumbers."
secret too. I love my cucumbers.
He's like, "This is how I get my muscles."
Amazing. That's so
Uh,
funny.
and then, of course, in fitness, I think the only one that I really recognized was, Ariel.
Mhm, mhm.
So she had a really
I feel
cool
like I know
routine.
the name Jacqueline Baker. Is she kind of newer?
Possibly. I don't know. I know I've heard of Ariel, and she did,
Ariel, yes, I
um, like, a Predator. Like, a shout out to Arnold. I
yeah,
liked how a lot of them did kind of, like, some routines with some Arnold movie throwbacks or, like, shout outs, which is
yeah,
kinda cool.
yeah.
Um, and then speaking of Arnold, he came backstage. So, at the Arnold fashion show, I gotta tell you, it was kind of a surreal moment for me because my very first coach, so when I decided I wanted to do this in 2010, my coach was like, "You gotta go watch a bodybuilding show."
Mhm.
Well, the only thing that I could drive to was the Arnold.
Wow.
So, he tells me to go to the Arnold in 2010, so I go. I, like, got to see Arnold. I saw Aaron Stern win on stage. So, this same stage in 2010 that started my bodybuilding journey, like, seeing her do figure and win and, like, seeing what this whole industry was all about, it was very eye-opening to this Indiana girl that was a teacher that I
Mhm.
mean, I saw some people that I was like, "Whoa, this is another world that I wanna be a part of." Um, so that very same stage, it has not changed. So this year, I actually got to do I did not realize that the Arnold fashion show for Angel Competition bikinis is done on the actual pro stage. So as soon as the pro bikini exited off, we got to go backstage, and we got to go on the exact stage that the pros went on, and all of a sudden we see these like men in blazers and like this Columbus PD, this huge entourage, and Arnold just jumps into like backstage and is like taking pictures with us. And I mean, he's just like surrounded by all these fashion show ladies. And I got a video like real quick of him just like centered in the middle of them. It was like really fast that he came in there and then came out, but it was
My
like the
gosh,
coolest thing ever. And then I got to step on the stage, in an evening gown and then in a couture suit, so it was kind of, like, crazy that 14 years later, I would have never pictured myself, like, being on that stage, actually walking on it, and having that opportunity, but yeah, the whole weekend was just, like, a total high for me because I mean, I couldn't have been more excited for Charla and just everything that happened and, like, being able to see, like, a lot of my clients and helping them out and,
I love
um yeah, so it was pretty amazing.
that's so cool. So, just like a follow-up with because you had your athlete there, Charlotte, and we interviewed her last week, and it was possibly my favorite interview we've ever done. So everyone, if you haven't listened to that, go listen to it. But just like a quick, like few things that you learned from this competition and like from coaching like a wheelchair competitor, and like have you ever done that before? Was she your
No.
first? Like just give me like a little tiny taste of like what you've learned or what you how you've grown as a coach doing that experience.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think that's a great question. Yeah, it's been a huge honor. I feel just really honored that she trusted me with this journey. As a coach, it's kind of scary because you want to make sure that you're keeping that athlete healthy and working within your scope of practice and just really working like with her, making sure that her surgeon was signing off on everything that we were going to do as our plan
Mhm,
and making sure that her spine is healthy throughout this process and that we're doing the best things for her health of her body was like my main concern. And then also just making sure that she's like, her PT, her OT, all those things like are in place that she is being like first and foremost is that the health of her spine is so important. Um, so I wanna make sure that that was, everything that I did to program was safe for her. Um, that was a huge challenge. I'd never coached anybody in wheelchair, um, but it's also been, like, a huge blessing too because we both learned things throughout the journey as well with just, like, in working with her spine surgeon and, like, she didn't she wasn't able to use her abs at first, and she had weight restrictions and things like that, and, like, just progressing through the motions of us, like, monitoring, and making sure that all of that's healthy first and her foundation. So, um, I do there was it was definitely challenging in that regard, and, I just felt like with us communicating was the best way that we could, do this because there were certain things that I didn't even know that I could program, like, she would be at a point where she could start to, like, move and sit in, like, a machine, or, she got to a point where at one point in the prep where she could stand and do some exercises, and different things that she could do that, like, you wouldn't normally think as a trainer, like, just things that you have to be aware of, like, in modifying exercises to make sure that they're appropriate and, um, working on, like, ab vacuums so that she can build up that internal corset, um, so that she's supporting all stakes of her spine and things like that, and just making sure we're building that foundation as well as just, like, there were a lot of times when she would be in a lot of pain,
Mhm.
um, from just the overuse of so much of her upper body. So, just in her daily functions, there was a while when like she couldn't really use her right arm as much because it was getting aggravated so much. And so, we looked at other alternatives for cardio, um, and got really creative, like with the bike and the swimming and things, so we could eliminate all extra movement with her arms as possible so that she could, you know, not only build, because bodybuilding's the biggest muscle category compared to bikini, which was like that's a polar opposite. Like you have the one end bot is bodybuilding the highest amount of muscle, the leanest, and then
Mhm.
you have bikini, which is the least amount of muscle and the softest.
Mhm.
So we had to go from like polar opposites. So we had to not only build, but we also had to get to the shredded most condition she's ever been in 3 months or 4 months, essentially. Um, and a couple of those months she had restrictions
Mhm.
on like abs and then like the amount of weight she was going to lift. So it was a huge learning curve for me as a coach. Like I had to keep her as fed as possible for as long as possible without any cardio. She kept saying, like, "Are we gonna get lean?" And I'm like, "Well, we have to build first." So we have to maximize these couple of months of like trying to eat as much as possible and not do as much cardio. And then we have like 2 months where we had to like really kind of cut. And so she was uncomfortable like with like our food. Like it wasn't the same as bikini, right? But we do, like, these refeeds, I think the lowest we got was, like, 1,400 calories, but we would do, like, a double refeed, so she was checking in biweekly, and then there were times, like, when she felt, like, really flat, really depleted, and she was, like, kind of, like, thinking, like, "Oh, I just wanna give up, like, I'm not gonna be big enough, like, I'm not gonna be lean enough, I look, like, watery," and she had at one point had put so much stress on her upper body, so, like, we that was when we kinda, like, pulled back on things and started utilizing legs, the larger muscle groups to kind of, like, help with leaning out, and then we do, like, these refeeds where, she was like, "Coach," she's like, 20 fats, like, 60 carbs, like 20 extra protein, like, twice a week, but we would do, like, a check-in, and then just like clockwork, it was like her muscle bellies just pushed against the skin. We filled them up with glycogen and some extra calories, and then her check-in, like, she maybe, like, gained a couple pounds, like, the day or 2 after, but then she'd have, like, a new low drop, like, in her waist and her weight every time we would do these refeeds.
Yeah.
So, we were just, like, really
How
keeping
did
an eye on
she
it.
weigh herself? Did she have, like, a special scale?
So I think she can stand,
Okay, gotcha.
so I think she can balance, like, for a very brief amount of time, with because she had mentioned that,
Yeah. She'd
but
mentioned that
yeah, she
she's starting to be able to. Yeah, okay.
yeah, so she does have a scale, and she was weighing herself, and really, there was only, like, a 5-pound difference from
Mhm.
the start of prep to the end,
Wow.
but her waist went down from, like I think it went down, like, 2.5 inches or maybe
Wow.
even 3, and
Total recap.
her her left bicep was, like, 10.6 or something, and then by the end of it, it was, like, 11.5.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, and her lat caught up, like, a lot too. So, yeah, she definitely grew, within that time, and yeah, it was just a different experience, but it was fun to kind of, you know, work with her and try to figure this whole sport out together.
I
So,
love that. So if anyone's listening and you're looking to do wheelchair bodybuilding or you know somebody who might. I know I asked her in that interview too, how if she could say some encouraging words to somebody that wasn't even a bodybuilder. Like she was a bodybuilder before this, like a lot of
yeah,
the wheelchair, athletes we talked about too, but like somebody, I mean, you don't have to be fit to get into fitness. We all start somewhere. So
yeah,
that would
yeah.
be it would be so cool to build that out with, like, your coaching and with Glam Girl and stuff. That'd be great.
Yeah, and her opposing coach did an awesome job. I mean, to get that kind of lat spread that she got, and that quickly, I know her coach is an actual women's bodybuilder, like, and an IFBB pro, and she was in the Russian ballet. And so, like, the whole routine was very, like, dancey and just she did a really good job with that because that's definitely not my expertise, and whenever I feel like I'm, like, outside my wheelhouse, I always wanna refer out, so I was glad that she was able to get a posing coach too, 'cause,
Mhm.
anything outside, like, bikini wellness and figure, I could help her with the quarter turns, but, like, those mandatory poses, I was so glad she had her coach to, like, choreograph that and everything.
Oh, yeah, and it's
So
on our Instagram too, the Glam Girl Instagram. Isn't her posing routine on there? It's so good. Go watch that, guys. It is so cool.
well, I know that you, have to run, but I appreciate you, taking the time to recap this episode. So, if you would like to apply for the team, you can go to glamgirlbikini.com and hit the get started button to apply for coaching with either Coach Leemarie or I. And you can tag us on Instagram at Prep Life Podcast or at Glam Girl Bikini. Thanks for listening, guys.